I want to welcome you all to the celebration of Easter Sunday and Passover, co-sponsored by the Unitarian Universalists of Gettysburg and the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. Perhaps especially in this season when we live in the dark shadow of illness and death, we need the hope and the promise of new life that these great stories offer. Whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever your gifts, whatever your challenges, we welcome you this morning. Let today be the beginning of a new life, a new start for all of us. We are all in this together.
It is a special joy to reunite with those of you this morning from York. It's good to see you again. But it is also a delight and a comfort to be with members of our own congregation, the Unitarian Universalists of Gettysburg, whom we can no longer see in person, but only through the glories of Zoom. We thank Reverend Terry for this invitation to participate in this joint service. Welcome to the celebration of hope. We want to introduce our Gettysburg participants to the Reverend Terry Cummings, minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. She's the one in the black robe, in case you wondered. Reverend Terry will now offer words of chalice lighting as members of the Dekker family light the chalice. Reverend Terry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Easter Passover service on this Easter Sunday morning. It's such a pleasure to be bringing you this service live from our sanctuary and to be joined by the Unitarian Universalists of Gettysburg. And I am just thrilled and delighted to be able to lead this worship service with Reverends John and Phyllis, and so that we can all be with you here again today. It's also a great joy for me to be able to bring you this service with all the people who are here gathered. I'm so thrilled that Gretchen Dekker is here and her children, Sophie and Noah, and Matt Shineman, our Director of Lifespan Faith Development, storyteller, organizer of Easter activities is here. And behind the camera and behind the sound are Tesla Taliaferro and Doug Hober, without whom everything would be dark on your screens right now. In the last few weeks, as we've been doing this service live from our sanctuary, a number of you have expressed concern that we properly observe the rules of social distancing, and we take that very seriously. And we're very grateful for your expressions of love and concern for our health and safety. And I want to introduce to you a very technical piece of precise equipment that was manufactured right here in New York. I don't know if you can read it here, but this is a 6-foot measuring stick, and it was made by a minister near you in their garage, and it is the UUCY official 6-foot measuring stick that we have been using to make sure we're all following the appropriate social distances. And one day, this measuring stick will be in the Smithsonian. It is written. So again, welcome everybody. So lovely to be here. I wish I could say that I can see you, but I'm glad that you can see me. So let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak and the songs that we sing. Let there be help and healing for our disharmony and despair. Let there be silence for the voice within us and beyond us. And now we will light our chalice as we begin our worship. I wrote some chalice lighting words for you this morning. There are special chalice lighting words in honor of Passover and Easter and this pandemic that we're going through. And I'm grateful to Gretchen for lighting the chalice as I say, share these words with you. This chalice lighting is called Today We Light a Candle. Today, we light a candle for all those who are sick all around the world. Today we light a candle for all the refugees fleeing from violence. May they escape to the promised land like the Israelites did. Today, we light a candle for the detainees and asylum seekers. May they be free to live their lives in peace. Today, we light a candle for the jobless. May they be free from worry. May their hands be busy again soon. Today, we light a candle for the hungry. May our abundance be shared with them all and not wasted. Today, we light a candle for all of the healthcare providers, hospital administrators, mask makers, and medical equipment makers all over the world. For they are the ones who set the world free from disease. Today, we light a candle of hope that the day will come very soon when we will all hold hands, hug, and be free of all the things that keep us from being free and equal. And today we light a candle for the strangers who love us enough to die for us, for theirs is the most generous love of all. May the light from this candle and from all of the candles that are lit in religious services during the Passover and Easter celebrations ignite the engine of freedom, the engine of truth, and the engine of justice everywhere. Amen. At this time, I'm going to invite you to follow the words of our opening hymn and listen to the lovely voice of Matt Shineman. It's number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Jesus was the supposed Son of God, and he taught people how to love each other, and he taught the golden rule. Wise man that lived over 2,000 years ago. An ordinary person with a great mind. God's son. A cool dude.
Jesus' 12 followers. He's the lead guy. That's the only one that matters.
They were 12 people who followed Jesus.
Romans and the Jewish leaders didn't like that he was there because he set out new ideas and things, and they thought he was going to cause a rebellion.
Because he was, sooner or later, Jesus was gonna lead a rebellion if they didn't stop him. Because maybe the Romans thought like that, like too many people were liking him, and that they would it was not normal, so they wanted to kill him. Because they liked the life, and then he changed it.
One of his disciples, Judas.
Judas.
One of his 12 disciples. Judas.
He was crucified on a cross, just like a criminal or a rebel would be.
He was killed.
He was killed?
Mm-hmm. The Romans killed him. He got arrested and killed. Yeah.
Some people think that he came back to life, but other people think that, like his followers thought they had such vivid dreams of him, and they thought that he came back to life, but the memory of him is still living on.
Some people say he woke from his coffin and talked to people. He went to heaven.
That's what the story says, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happened?
He's buried somewhere. They saw him rising from his grave. That they saw him and talked to him. And they couldn't tell if it was real or if they were just dreaming. And the groups of
Disciples?
gathered together. Some people that he knew got to see him and he came back and got him.
That we should always look up to Jesus and try to live from what he's taught us.
So the most memorable part about the story for me was the betrayal. So when Judas surrendered Jesus to the Romans, that part really stuck with me. I was like, do my friends do that?
That people thought that he was maybe good. Well, they didn't like him that much, so they decided to kill him.
Okay.
The person named Judas betrayed him, and he was very wise.
Judas was wise? No, you mean Jesus was wise. He's a very wise man.
I remember golden rule.
What's the golden rule?
Treat others how you want to be treated. I think it's partially about their beliefs that he was dead. When he got killed and when is killed and got arrested, and I think when he I forget it, so I'll just go with Sutton's answer.
What he's done to help his cities and communities to spread kindness and love for everyone.
I think that the disciples would remember Jesus' resolution to carry everyone's sins on his back, the most memorable thing about him. Because that's what stuck with me. Besides the betrayal, that is what stuck with me.
How nice he was to the people. They had dreams about him. How he was kind and wise. His actions. When he was nice to other people, even when they were mean to him.
Zoom fairies have been interfering with some of our connectivity issues, and we've learned that some people are having a difficulty logging onto our Zoom feed. So we're going to take just a 2-minute break, and hopefully we'll be able to expand the availability of our Zoom connection so that more people can join us. So I'm going to ask you to bear with us for just a few minutes while we adjust one of the settings on our Zoom connection. This is something that happens when we're trying new technology. Please bear with us. Maybe think about those who are in hospital today, suffering from this virus. Maybe think about the joy of being together on this Sunday morning. We will resume just in a few short minutes. So we are resuming. It appears that we haven't actually been able to fix all the technical difficulties. We are going to continue with our service, and we will record the service and put it up on our website for everyone to see later who could not join us. And so now we're going to our second hymn, number 269, Lo, the Day of Days Are Here. And Matthew will sing the words through, and Gretchen and Noah and Sophie will play, and the words will appear on your screen.
Lo, the Easter tide is here.
That was lovely. Thank you. I'm going to take just a few seconds to talk about giving. Normally, at this point in our Sunday morning service, we take up an offering to support the work of our congregation and also to support the work of one of our partner organizations with whom we share our plate. So at this time, this is just a brief reminder that there are ways to contribute electronically during the hiatus from in-person worship services, both here in York and also in Gettysburg. And we invite you and encourage you to be generous with your gifts, either mail them in or make them electronically, because even though buildings are closed, the costs of running the church still continue. So we ask you just to take a moment to think about giving what you would normally give at this time in the service. And we promise you, as we do every Sunday, that we will do everything we can to use your gifts wisely and well, and that we are deeply, deeply grateful for your generosity, which supports the work of our congregations, which are completely self-sustaining. With that, I'm going to turn matters over to Reverend Phyllis. She has a reading to share about our finest hour, and after Phyllis reads, Matt will lead us in singing the Unitarian Universalist national anthem, Spirit of Life. And after that, Matt will then lead us through one of his mysterious activities, and I'm sure that it will be fun to watch. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to Reverend Phyllis.
Gretchen Dekker is a psychologist specializing in trauma. I have been spending a lot of time on Facebook these last weeks and have found some wonderful readings. This is one of them. She wrote these words about the pandemic in her blog. For the vast majority of people, nationwide and worldwide, this virus is not about you. This is one of those times in life, in history, when your actions are about something bigger. They are about someone else. They are about something greater, a greater good that you may never witness, a person you may save, who you will never meet. What is our work? The biggest work we can do is to expand our hearts and our minds to see ourselves and our families as part of a much bigger community that can have a massive, a hugely massive impact on the lives of other people. You can help now by asking yourself, what can I and my family do to help? What can we offer? You can help by seeing yourself as part of something bigger than yourself. When the Apollo 13 oxygen tank failed and the lunar module was in danger of not returning to Earth, Gene Kranz, the lead flight director, overheard people saying that this could be the worst disaster NASA had ever experienced, to which he is rumored to have responded, with all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour. If we could make our response to this crisis our finest hour, imagine if a year or two from now we look back on this and told the stories of how we came together as a team in our state, in our community, and across the world. Your contribution to the finest hour may seem small, invisible, inconsequential, but every small act of not doing what you were going to do and doing an act of kindness or support will add up exponentially. These acts can and will save lives. The Apollo 13 crew made it their finest hour by letting go of the word I and embracing the word we. And that's the task required of us. It can only be our finest hour if we work together. You are all on the team, and we need all of you to shine in whatever way you can.
get completely crushed. They get completely flattened. And then immediately they pop up back to life and they keep going, right? Like nothing happened. But we know that's not really what happens in real life. And in real life, we're cautious because we know that if we get hurt, that it could take a lot to get back from being hurt. So imagine this carrot is us. This water is something that is coming to squash us as it would a cartoon character. What happens if we put it in? It sinks. Is there anything we can do to make it come back up? Maybe jiggle it, hit it a little bit? No, nothing happened. We could essentially say that this carrot is not coming back to life. But there are some things that help bring us back from those moments of despair. And as what we've been talking about all service is hope. Hope has a power over us. A little bit of hope, floating a little bit, but not so much. Some more hope. We are almost there. And when we combine all of our hope together, the carrot has risen. It is no longer underwater. Its head has popped out. And that is the power of hope. That is the message and the power of Easter. That when we individually and we collectively band together and use the power of hope, we are able to raise ourselves up from those hard times and come back to the surface. So I hope that you'll take the message that we're saying today in all of our songs and all of our sermons and reflections and sharings, as well as this visual image of the carrot that was sunk and is now floating. May you have a blessed Easter day, and I can't wait to see you again. We're going to go into Spirit of Life as the as the anthem, as Reverend Terry called it, the UU National Anthem. So we're going to go straight into that. We're going to sing it twice. First time through in English, second time through in Spanish. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Vente amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar,
like to share a reading with you from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 23, verses 1 through 12. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it. But do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on the shoulders of others. But they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. They love to have a place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogue, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have people call them Rabbi. But you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you're all students. Nor are you to be called instructor, for you have one instructor. The greatest among you will be your servant. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." The Gospel according to Matthew. During these times of social distancing, I've had an image in my mind from the days when I lived in suburban New Jersey. There's a commuter railroad line that works its way through the town in which I lived. And at various places, the railroad line crosses some of the major arteries, and there are crossings with gates and lights and bells that come down, and it's pretty frequent throughout the course of the day as you drive through this town and others in New Jersey and other metropolitan areas to hear the sound of the bells clanging from half a mile away. And as you draw up to the intersection, the gates come down and the lights flash, and you are stuck, waiting for the train to come by. It seems like it's an hour, but it's only 5 minutes. And I've been thinking about that image these last few weeks as we've been in lockdown, how we've been stuck in front of a railroad line. These past few weeks at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York, we followed a theme of the hero's journey. A couple of weeks ago, our theme was based on Joseph Campbell's mythological hero's journey. Campbell, as many of you will know, wrote about the stories of different civilizations where a hero sets off, has an adventure, and then returns. Last week on Palm Sunday, we talked about another hero who set off on a journey to Washington, D.C., and we shared some clips from the old movie from 1939, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and we envisioned Jesus of Nazareth going to the Washington, D.C. of his day, Jerusalem. And so this week on Easter Sunday, we've come to the end of the hero's journey. We end with Jesus of Nazareth telling his disciples about the hypocrisy of those in power, and then going off to be betrayed and to the crucifixion and the resurrection. And so we say goodbye today to our hero. The reading from the Gospel of Matthew was not just a reference to the hypocrisy of those who are in power. It was also a message of hope, which is one we need now during this pandemic more than ever. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who are humbled will be exalted. In the Christian tradition, Easter Sunday is a day to celebrate the resurrection of the Messiah after suffering death on the cross. For Christians, Jesus of Nazareth represents God walking on earth in human form. And for Christians, the resurrection represents the triumph of faith over evil and the promise of eternal life. We Unitarian Universalists have had a troubled relationship with the theology of Easter. It all started back in the 5th century when St. Augustine came up with the idea of original sin and what came to be known as the doctrine of atonement. According to this theology, Christ suffered on the cross in order to atone for all of the sins of humanity that began with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. St. Augustine even went so far as to say that human beings lack the capacity of free will because of their being tempted by sin. And because of that, most of us are predestined to spend an eternity in hell after we leave this earth. And this idea of predestination was embraced by the Calvinists who came to America as the Puritans in the 17th century. As you might imagine, the idea that human beings lack free will eventually didn't sit too well with those fiercely independent New England Yankees who would become our Universalist forebears. And the idea of original sin didn't sit too well either with the Unitarians. Both denominations, Unitarians and Universalists, saw humanity as inherently good. And it's from that we inherit our affirmation, our covenant, to support the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And it is from that our commitment as Unitarian Universalists to social justice owes its roots. So then, what meaning can we 21st century Unitarian Universalists find in the story of Easter? As I said earlier, I think it is a message of hope, notwithstanding the fact that the resurrection of Christ is questionable in the minds of many. And I would share with you that the first of the New Testament Gospels, the Gospel of Mark, the first to be written, actually ends with an empty tomb. Stories of resurrection were added centuries after the Christ journey took place. I'd like to share with you a book written by two Unitarian Universalist ministers and authors, a book called Saving Paradise: How Christianity Traded Love for This World for Crucifixion and Empire, by Rebecca Parker and Rita Nakashima Brock. The authors show how for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, Christian art did not have any pictures of the crucifixion. Instead, they were pictures of paradise. It wasn't until the Crusades of the 1100s that Christian art started to include images of Christ on the cross suffering, a reference to the need to suffer in war. So for me, the primary message of Easter and this day is a message of hope and also a message of love. Love in particular. Many among us are fortunate to experience love in their lives, and the knowledge that we're loved unconditionally by someone is one of life's greatest gifts. For most of us, that love starts in childhood from our parents and our siblings. Some of us find love as adults. One of the sad realities of life, though, is that some people go throughout their life never finding a stable, loving relationship. As a pastor, I've encountered many people who shared with me that their lives lack love. Imagine what it'd be like to go through your entire life without ever knowing what it was like to be loved unconditionally. On Easter Sunday, though, we celebrate a person who so loved everyone that he was willing to die for us. It's that simple. Just think about this for a second. What does it feel like to have a complete stranger love us so much that they're willing to die for us? That is what the Jesus story brings, for me anyway. And that's not that uncommon, for strangers to love people so much that they're willing to die. Think of the first responders who come to the scene of an accident or a fire. Think of the thousands of brave healthcare providers who have risked their lives to nurse and heal people during this COVID-19 virus pandemic. I was very sad, but not surprised, to learn that the impact of the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on the lives of Black and brown people, much harder than the rest of the population. I say sad, but not surprised. Why would we be surprised given the deep inequities in wealth and access to health care that are systemic, baked into our national infrastructure? And it is on their shoulders, the Black and brown communities and the poor white communities as well, on which, to use the words that were in Matthew's gospel that I read from just a few minutes ago, it is on their shoulders that heavy burdens, hard to bear, are laid by leaders who are unwilling to lift a finger to help them. Perhaps I'm being cynical, but I can't help but think that the urgency of big business to get up and running again is being driven in part by the desire to put profit before people, especially people who our economy treats as a fungible commodity. Will we ever feel comfortable shaking hands again? Will it be safe to give each other a hug again? Yes. Yes, it will. Although the world has been changed forever by this pandemic. But perhaps in the new normal, we'll find a way to provide for the least of us and give life to the Easter message. Perhaps the poor will no longer be an expendable resource, a resource that can be replaced when something less expensive to maintain, less expensive to educate, house, clothe, heal from illness, and pay comes along. Perhaps after this pandemic, those who exalt themselves will be humbled. And after all, maybe the humble will be exalted. I think we're all quietly waiting for the gate to be raised and the train to pass, for life to begin again as normal. After the train passes, the big red lights will stop flashing, the loud bells will stop ringing, and in the newfound quiet, the gate will lift up. Will we all speed off in a race, fastest over the track and to reach the top of the economic mountain wins? What if instead all of us begin the race anew and instead join our hands together or cross the tracks together at the same time, making sure that this time no one gets left behind. This pandemic will not last forever, and after it is over, our congregations will be there. For each other, we will be strong, and we will live the new normal. And I know that we will live it in love and with hope. May it be so. This time, please follow along our closing hymn, number 1039, Be Thou With Us, and Matthew will lead us in singing.
Be thou with us now and always, now and always. Blessed be. Be thou with us now and always, now and always. Blessed be. Be thou with us now and always, now and always. Blessed be.
John and Phyllis and I will now share a benediction with you that was written by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. Turn it over to Reverend Phyllis and John.
Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds.
Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves.
Of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things.
Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our own hearts with our own compassion.
Toward ourselves and toward all living beings.
Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. This time in our service, we extinguish the chalice, and we invite you to share our unison reading.
We extinguish this flame,
but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts
until we are together again.
May you have safe passage, safe passage, safe passage, safe passage on your way, safe passage on your way, brother, safe passage on your way, sister, safe passage on your way, sweet children, safe passage on your way. May you have safe passage, safe passage, safe passage, safe passage on your way, safe passage on your way, brother, safe passage on your way, sister, safe passage on your way, sweet children, safe passage on your way.
I'm not who I once was, defined by all the things I've done. Afraid my shame would be exposed, afraid of really being known. But then you gave my heart a home, so I walked out of the darkness and into the light, from fear of shame into the hope of life. Mercy called my name and made a way to fly out of the darkness and into the light. Years of keeping secrets safe, wondering if I could change. 'Cause when you're hiding all alone, your heart can turn into a stone, and that's not the way I want to go. So I'll walk out of the darkness and into the light, from fear of shame into the hope of life. Mercy called my name and made a way to fly out of the darkness and into the light. There's no place I'd rather be. Your light is marvelous, your light is marvelous. You have come to set us free. You are marvelous, your light is marvelous to me. So I'll walk out of the darkness